Hey, the Jags were in this game 3 seasons ago. Remember that?
No.
The road back to it certainly looks long. Changes made last week with offense coordinator John DeFilippo and Doug Marrone parting ways. Well, splitting up. Marrone now searching for a new play caller. More on that in a moment. This was an interesting move because you would almost think the Jags would want the continuity on offense, but Flip did have ties to Nick Foles, so maybe just a theory here. Makes you wonder if you wanted to ride with Nick Foles in 2020 and maybe Doug Marrone could be leaning Gardner Minshew, and so they didn't see eye to eye on that. Just a guess. Flip already found a new home, the QB coach in Chicago.
I just think in the end he didn't mesh with the Jaguar coaching staff, and so they decided to part ways, mutually part ways. My only problem with the whole move is why is it happening so late in the game, right? So, you know, again, we'll talk about some of the candidates in just a second, but, you know, the candidate, the hot candidate, you know, the exciting candidate would have been the kid from LSU, right?
Yeah,
Joe Brady. Yeah. I mean, if you brought him in here, there would have been at least people talking, you know, a buzz. Instead, we're going to get some of the recycled old former head coaches, and we'll have more on that in a sec. But the offense, go ahead.
It's not an attractive job. Maybe a one-year job.
Yeah.
For the person coming in.
But one of 32, and if you're a young guy trying to make your way, why not? Now, I know he wanted to work with Matt Rule, so I'm not saying you should have got just that guy and that guy alone, but it'll be interesting to see what direction they go in.
All right, the Jags only scored 18.8 points a game, and that was lifted a bit with that big performance in the season finale against Indianapolis.
Yeah.
26th overall in the NFL.
And it got worse when they got inside the opponent's 20-yard line. The Jags couldn't score touchdowns, 31st in red zone offense.
And while Minshew did do some good things, as a quarterback unit, the Jags were 26th in quarterback rating, so it was really peaks and valleys in a big-time way. This has been a problem for the Jaguars. If you look at good offenses, they usually are stable and have continuity. The Jags have had anything but that with their offensive coordinators.
Yeah, if you do the numbers, third in 3 seasons, you want to go back to 2013, Jags have had 6 OCs in their last 7 seasons. That is not a recipe for success.
And tough for the quarterbacks and offenses in general. Jags are getting closer to finding a new play caller, though. Several reports this week, including former New York Giants head coach Ben McAdoo interviewing with Doug Marrone. McAdoo didn't have a lot of success as a head man, but he's done pretty well as an offensive coordinator if you look at the resume.
And I like the way he slicked his hair back. Another report this weekend, Scott Linehan interviewing for the job, another veteran guy. Linehan most recently with the Dallas Cowboys, took 2019 off. Linehan also a former head coach of the St. Louis Rams from 06 to 08.
And then the latest one this morning, a report from Ian Rappaport. Jay Gruden, the former Redskins head coach, could be looking for a gig and could be on the Jaguars' radar interviewing with Doug Marrone. And that's a name, of course, that everybody likes to hear. Intriguing. I kind of feel like a Gruden-Minshew partnership feels like it might work out and could be right. But let's get some reaction today from this, from some of the folks on social media. I love this when it comes to Jay Gruden potential. Kyle says, not a fan of Gruden as a person, but hard to deny his track record. Go for it. I don't really know Jay Gruden as a person, so I'm not sure about that. Jay is a great OC, but terrible head coach, and there's a big difference. There's a lot of folks on both sides of the ball that do a better job coordinating than they do as a head coach. One other thing right here, Giants hiring Garrett as OC head coach. I would have stopped watching the team, but I would have preferred Gruden. Whoever gets him will have a top-tier OC right away. So another nice thing to say about Jay Gruden. We'll see what happens. I would expect something to shake down early this week for the Jacksonville Jaguars in their OC position.
It's my great honor to tell you that you're going to be the 328th Hall of Famer into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
That's pretty cool. Some extra announcements for this year's Pro Football Hall of Fame class. Jimmy Johnson, Bill Cowher giving the good news live on TV last weekend, added members to this year's class because of the 100th season of the NFL.
The reaction that they have is what makes it so great.
Really cool.
Jimmy Johnson was hyperventilating, and Cowher with the jaw, the tears. It was great stuff.
Yeah, as you knew, they kind of recognized what was happening there. By the way, those are tough football guys shedding some tears. And maybe one will do that soon enough. Back on the chase for a championship, Tony Boselli, it seems, has been chasing the Hall of Fame for 4 years now.
Yeah, 4th time as a finalist, but he hasn't lost his sense of humor about being so close. We sat down this week with number 71 in your Jaguars program as he hopes Canton comes a-calling in 13 days. Well, here we are again, big fella.
We are.
Another year.
Well, yes.
This is your 4th
yeah, fourth time as a finalist.
Yeah. And it doesn't get any easier. It's a great honor, and yet it's also, quite honestly, and you don't have to say this, but I will, a bit torturous.
Yeah, it's stressful.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. Right now it's not because it's so he's still down the road. But the Saturday or the week of the Super Bowl kind of ramps up, and that Saturday's it's a long day. And this year more than any other year, like I'm fighting the thoughts of going there now, to the Saturday, trying to remember.
You don't want to go.
Remember what it feels like when the phone rings and there's no knock and the disappointment and everything else. So I'm trying to put that out of my mind and hope for the best, and we'll see what happens.
Listen, and the other hard part is there are 15 great guys. I know we joke, but you can make an argument for any one of them to get into the Hall.
Yeah, they're all. I mean, you go down the list, and this year there's 3 offensive linemen. There's 4 last year. There's 3 this year. Me, Faneca, and Hutchinson. Those guys are great guards. I played tackle. Listen, the big thing against me is I got hurt, and so length of career. So nothing I can do about it.
Nope.
Everyone has different standards of who gets in, who doesn't. But you look at some of the positions. I mean, I think there's 4 safeties.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you?
That tells you that one safety's getting in.
Yeah, you would.
You know what I mean? When it's there's going to be in my mind.
You say that though. One year there was 5 offensive linemen,
0,
and none of us got in.
Wow.
And so it's interesting how it goes and kind of how they determine.
Yeah.
It's not an exact science, and I'd love to be a fly on the wall.
Yes,
Bottom line is it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't.
No doubt.
There's no trends.
Nope.
3 straight years, a Jacksonville area football player has been elected in the Hall. 2 years ago, Brian Dawkins. Last year, Champ Bailey from Southeast Georgia. Already this year, Harold Carmichael. And now could former Lehigh star Leroy Butler join them. Certainly Hall-worthy, but a first-time finalist with 3 other safeties on the board will be interesting for the inventor of the Lambeau Leap. And, Dan, just for that, he probably should get in.
Well, he certainly has the fame part down. Here's a look at some of the other big names on the ballot this year, including a pair of safeties, Troy Polamalu, John Lynch, running back Edgerrin James, which would be good news for Fred Taylor because they have similar stats, and we want to get Fred going and get him into the finalist group. Wideout Isaac Bruce with a strong case to be inducted. But honestly, when you get down to the final 15, but you can really make an argument for all of them.
Yeah, and this is where we get a little angry this time of year, though, because Boselli needs to be in there.
Well,
Jaguars need to be represented.
25 years, it's time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We mentioned Harold Carmichael a bit earlier. Raised in Jacksonville, Carmichael attended Raines High School, where he was a quarterback for the Vikings.
Yeah, but he switched to receiver in college, and the tallest receiver the game has ever known at 6'8", finally joined the Hall this week as a member of the Centennial class.
Action Sports Shaq Stewart Weber with more on the high-flying Eagle headed to Canton, Ohio in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
The road for Harold Carmichael to Canton, Ohio has certainly been a long one, but it started right here in Jacksonville, Florida, where he attended Raines High School playing for the Vikings. He was also in the band, played clarinet, as well as football, where he was a quarterback and safety. He graduated in 1967, going on to play in college at Southern University. He was a walk-on there, playing 3 sports: basketball, football, and track and field. Hard to imagine nobody would want a 6'8" playmaker, but he walked on at Southern, never did lead the team in receptions. Crazy to think when you consider he is now a Hall of Fame wide receiver. He'd be drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles in 1971, makes the Pro Bowl 4 times in his career with the Eagles, as well as a second-team nod for the 1970s All-Decade team, and earning Man of the Year award in 1980. But now, well, that journey takes Harold Carmichael to the Pro Football Hall of Fame as part of this special Centennial class to kind of help some of these guys who maybe fell through the cracks in this process, a very tough process to make it into, as we've seen the past few years with Tony Boselli. Now, his being elected really won't affect the modern class. That will still be determined coming up on the day before the Super Bowl. In the studio, Stuart Weber, let's go back to you.
All right, we also told you Brian Dawkins, the first Viking inducted into the Hall. Champ Bailey would follow last year as he made Folkestone proud. And now Carmichael joins the group of locals in Canton the past few years. I would suggest you'll never find a group from a smaller area like Jacksonville do this, what's happened the last 3 years.
I'd love to see the stats on it. I just don't know if I have time to do the research.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Isaiah Simmons, Clemson, Jags uniform.
Maybe.
I mean, listen, it's hard to take linebackers, but if you're talking best player on the board, potential in the top 10, this could be one of the guys. Does he remind you a little bit of like a Derwin James impact where he could play all over the place?
Plus, he declared this week, too, so just the other day. So interesting stuff. All right, we're back on Action Sports Jack's Chase for the Championship. Dan Hicken and Brent Martineau, Isaiah Simmons. Let's take a look at, I've got a little mock draft. I went through 6, 7 rounds, and you kind of critique it for me, if you will. Okay?
I like to do that.
So with the first pick, yeah, I'm taking Isaiah Simmons. Here's what I think, though, Brent. I think either the big tackle from Georgia or Derek Brown from Auburn and this guy, because the quarterbacks are going to go, I think 2 or 3 quarterbacks are going to go. One of those guys is going to fall. My only question with this is, if you draft them, use them, Jacksonville. Don't pigeonhole him into a position. He'd be one of your best 11. He's on the field all the time.
Yeah, if you want best football players, like we're saying, take the best player available. So, this guy could be it. Now, you don't take linebackers normally in the top 10.
Yeah.
But if you think about the Jaguars' defense, and you think like Todd Washer's even coming back and he's safe, it looks like, on that coaching staff, I think one of the excuses is their linebacker play was awful. And if you have bad linebacker play in this scheme, you're not going to do very well.
Well, I got another pick in the first round. Now, this is going to change because guys are moving up and down, but I got to get a big fella in the middle.
I need
and
big
that's the guy I'm going to get. So here's your big body. Javon Kinlaw is a really good football player from South Carolina. I like him. He may not be there at 20, but right now he is.
I like it.
All right. So then we're going to move on to the second round, and I'm going to keep getting big bodies. This is a guy I declared. This is not the other kid from Georgia, but Isaiah Wilson. He could be around at 42. Get him and put him at tackle.
If you don't weigh in at 300 pounds, I don't want you.
Yeah. You know I need a cornerback, so I'm not going to say his name, but I saw this guy make like 3 picks against Jake Fromm. I like this guy. I'm going to pick him.
By a vowel at the very least. And by the way, don't get wrapped up in replacing Jalen Ramsey, but they will need some cornerback
Big
play.
lanky corner can really play. All right, now I'm going to get a couple skill position. Donovan Peoples-Jones from Michigan. Caught like 40 balls, 14 touchdowns the last 2 years, 6'2", 200. Allen Robinson type.
You can pick wide receivers in this draft out of a hat. It's a very deep draft in wide receivers.
Ooh, look who might be available in the 6th round. I mean, this guy, I don't understand. If he's there at 6th round, you'll take him, right?
I would take him.
Okay, Cam Akers, of course.
Underused at Florida State.
And then I saw this guy. I also was surprised to see 187th pick, Jared Pinkney, a tight end from Vanderbilt. And I'll let you do the rest. I don't care about the rest. That's where I did the heavy lifting. You finish up with the 7th round.
The bottom line is, if you can find tight ends and wide receivers later in the draft.
Yeah.
So I don't mind what you did there.
Okay.
Although, if that's the picks, well, we're going to Vegas all the time.
Yeah.
Hey, the roving NFL draft stops in Vegas in April, like the stops in New York City, Chicago, Philly, Dallas, and Nashville. Action Sports Jacks will be there once again, so we will be there for the NFL draft in 2019. 2 picks in the first round will make things a bit more interesting than usual from the Vegas Strip, but of course, once again, Jaguars drafting in the top 10. Our Action Sports Jacks research staff says the last former Jag to play in a Super Bowl was linebacker Brandon Marshall with the Broncos in Super Bowl 50.
Former Jags. Been a few years. Could happen this year. Some former Jags still in play for the Lombardi Trophy.
Action Sports Jacks, Marcel Robinson, roaming the rosters for Jags connections in today's games.
It's the annual game of Where Are They Now? Which former Jacksonville Jaguar is now in a position to play for a Super Bowl title? Look, the Jaguars are not the only team that says goodbye to players that go on to better their careers. It's the nature of the business, but it sure seems like there's a former Jaguars player on every team. Let's start in the NFC Championship game where a trio of Green Bay Packers once called Jacksonville home. Longtime tight end Mercedes Lewis in his 2nd season catching passes from Aaron Rodgers after 12 seasons in Jacksonville, as is wide receiver Allen Lazard, who's benefited greatly from most of the attention being paid to Devontae Adams. Running back Tyler Ervin was claimed off the practice squad and has made most of his impact on special teams. Sheldon Day was a 4th-round draft pick for the Jags in 2016. The defensive end is now part of a stingy San Francisco defense, but he's only racked up 4 sacks in a total of 2 seasons. And the lone departee in the AFC is tight end Blake Bell in Kansas City, playing opposite of some guy named Travis Kelce. I've heard he's pretty good. Look, I'm not saying that the fact that these guys are not on the Jaguars roster is any cause for uproar. To be fair, none of them are really making consistent game-changing plays for their new teams, which is likely the reason that they're not here. In the studio, Marcel Robinson, let's go back to you.
And we're going to hold it here. Green and hold it. There we go. We're going to hold it. And then there we go.
Quite an epic journey for Gardner Minshew in the RV at the beginning of this offseason. The latest stop, as you see, a trip with the Thunderbirds.
I think I already did 9 Gs up there. Remember, he got that big hit from Baltimore. I wonder which one was tougher.
Yeah.
Hey, later this week, next week, a week from today, we'll be in Miami. And we got some shows Super Bowl week as well. Have a good Sunday, everybody. Championship Sunday in the NFL. It should be fun.